The Dice Tower, episode 555. Come on, CMON.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by USAopoly. Share laughter and make memories. Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, Mandy and I are here recording live at the CMON Expo in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. We're joined by a special guest to help chat about our experiences. We'll talk about the games that we've played, our con experiences, and at the end, we'll have a little discussion about overproduced games.
Oh boy.
I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
And our special guest here is
Dan King, the Game Boy Geek.
Welcome to the show, Dan. It's so nice. Thanks for joining us. All right, so this is our first, Mandy, your first time at CMON Expo, my first time at CMON Expo, and it's Friday, so it's really officially the first full day of the show here in Atlanta. And I gotta say, it's busy. There are games being played, demos being done, a lot of table space, games being sold. I'm really impressed so far.
It's not what I was expecting. I don't know, in my mind, I thought it was going to be this huge, crazy con, and I'm actually happy that there's still a lot of people, still a lot going on, but it's still small enough that you feel comfortable. You know, you're not always running around doing a lot of work. I like the atmosphere so far.
Actually, I think that's a really good point from a size and a crowding point of view. I don't feel claustrophobic or pinned in. It definitely feels spacious right now.
Exactly. This is not new for you, so.
No, I mean, it's a smaller con. It does have that intimate feeling where there's, you're in the right size room for the right amount of people, I'd say.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, people think that I'm super outgoing, and she's crazy, but I like the quieter cons. I have to say, it's nice, and it's nice to connect with people. So I think that's important.
Yeah, it's got a good vibe for sure, and definitely I've gotten to talk to a number of people. It's not one of those things where everything is so hectic that, you can't introduce yourself to new people and have a conversation and get to know them a little bit, which is really, really fun. And I know that online there's been a little bit of discussion lately from people talking about trying to go to their first game convention and being a little wary about what that experience is like, being curious about etiquette or, how to jump in or how to deal with certain situations. And I think often you see, the recommendation ends up being try a smaller convention first. And I think what they were saying that they had about 600 pre-registrations for this show.
Good, that's big.
That's a really nice size. Not too big and not too small.
Right.
And for the first time people, another reason why it's good is because they have demoers teaching you the games at the tables, and not all conventions are set up to really have that for all the games that are there to be played. So people can come in and they can learn a game. They don't have to worry about knowing someone. They don't have to worry about putting a flag on a table. They can just come and be taught the game by someone who knows how to play it.
And you get to try really new games as well, which is pretty fun.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'm learning a bunch of new games, which we will talk about momentarily.
But, we're in the hotel, a Hyatt Regency here in Atlanta, and I think a lot of people are staying. Obviously, if you're local, there might be people driving in. But if you're curious about what the experience is, Mandy and I are sharing a hotel room here, and so we just ride the elevator downstairs, and there's a huge kind of convention or conference room area, and we are in a massive ballroom. I mean, this room is...
It's big.
Very, very big. That we're recording right now, and that's why you're hearing background noise. Apologies for that a little bit. And on one side, they actually have a store set up where you can buy all of the CMON games and expansions and accessories and things like that. Broken Token is here.
Yep.
They're selling their accessories. And then they have a small game library, which has games from all different kinds of publishers.
Right. So it's not just CMON. You're getting a bit of everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then they have a nice big area full of demo tables that you were talking about, Dan. And what are some of the games that you sell over there?
In the demo tables?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, many of the ones that we're going to talk about, right? Are you going to jump right in, or?
No, I think that we're just giving them an idea of what the show is like.
Yeah, so we won't get too much detail yet. That's for later.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. We saw Council of Four, we saw 13 Clues, we saw a little bit of Song of Fire and Ice. We've seen Blood Rage being played, older games. We've seen
And Rising Sun.
Rising Sun, yeah.
They have some of their older popular games and a lot of their newer stuff, and some of the games that aren't really even out in retail yet. Like Council of Four is a new one that's not even really out yet.
Yes.
They have it showing there. You can play that.
Looking forward to talking about that one because that was new to me, not to the other people on the podcast. But we'll get into more details of that later.
And one of the things that feels a little bit different from other conventions that I've gone to is there's a lot of painting, right?
Yeah.
Because CMON has so much miniature action going on. There's a lot of painting tutorials and painting workshops, and other conventions have those as well. But here, they're just in the same giant ballroom. They actually have like an area that they've put plastic down on the
I feel
carpet.
like I'm in a scene of Dexter, like especially when I saw the red paint. I'm like, wow, what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, and at one point we had a game that we were trying to play, and we sat down on that side of the whole ballroom, and we were sitting at a table, which you think is a normal game table, but then we realized we were like 5 feet from each other because the tables are so large.
Yeah.
They're meant for miniatures. And we're like, wait a minute, you're in a different zip code. Let's all sit on the same side of the table and play the game. It was really funny.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, absolutely.
And so it's kind of cool that the painting is in the same space. I actually, at other conventions, you have to go into like a conference room or something where they have the painting set up. So I like that I can just kind of peek over and cruise around and see what that's going on. There's some real talented people here, which is very, very cool. And then, all those tables just to sit around and play. So,
All right, games. I want to talk about games.
all right, talk about games.
Okay, what are we starting with first? Are we starting with games that we played here at CMON?
Sure.
Okay, see, I like making the rules. Okay, so, modern art. Can we talk about that one?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I'm talking about this one because I had a devastating and crushing loss at the hands of Suzanne.
Now, crushing is such a strong word.
Dan, come on.
She destroyed us.
Thank you.
Her name is Suzanne One Percenter Sheldon.
Oh, hey, just because I have excellent taste in art and a discerning eye.
And the richer got richer, and she just killed us, destroyed us. But she's played before, we hadn't played.
So wait, let's back it up. I got a little excited. So let's talk about. Well, wait, I gotta tell people what modern art's about. Like people have no idea what it's about. So it's an auction type game, and I kind of went, oh, really? Auction? Ew. And
Ew.
then we played it, and I was like, hello. So in the game, I'm sorry, really excited. Players get cards, and what I like about the cards, they're cards of art, and you have different artists on the card. The board is also depicting these artists, and they have, is it 5 spaces? Under each 4.
Yep.
And this is depicting how many rounds are going to happen in the game. There's another game this is similar to, and for the life of me, I cannot remember it. Hopefully by the end of this podcast, I will. In your hand of art, you're trying to sell off your art in a variety of ways in order for people to buy them, potentially yourself, and get money. So I like the auctioning in this game because you have different ways of doing it. You can do it by setting a price depending on the little symbol that's depicted on the card. You can have open auction, closed auction. What are some of the others? I'm missing a couple there.
One time around. Yep.
Double auction.
Oh, that double
Card auction.
Yeah, somebody used that quite a bit. We won't say who. Her name's Suzanne. Anyway, things like that. So you want to have a lot of a certain colored painting or of an artist on available out on the board in front of everybody because those are going to be worth more at the end of the game. Now, there was something else that happened. If it didn't score, if there weren't a lot of them out on the table in the next round, they were not continuing to
There's
score.
a stacking scoring system.
Yeah.
So the top 3 most popular painters get $30, $20, or $10 $1,000 for their paintings. The next round, those stack. So if that painter is in the top again, whatever money they had in the last round and the new money stacks, and those paintings get more and more valuable from that artist. But if somehow that painter has fallen in popularity and doesn't manage to be one of the top tier painters in the next round, you don't get any money for those paintings in that round. So it's very tricky as you're trying to be strategic about predicting where the prices will go, trying to control the popularity, but also keeping in mind the stacking scoring and what's worth it and what's not. There's definitely some planning that can go
Absolutely.
in there.
And I think this is where we failed a little bit, Dan, because we should have stopped Suzanne and Robert from taking over certain artists, having them become very popular, and introduced a new artist to kind of break away from that so they wouldn't get those large scoring totals.
Yeah, because they did really good in the first 2 rounds, and they had so much money, we had a hard time trying to catch back up. But if we had played it again, we would have definitely played it differently in that regard.
Absolutely. First time is always just about figuring it out, but as someone who is not a huge fan of the auction mechanic, I liked this because it had different types of ways to auction your painting.
Yeah.
I think the diversity in the auction type based on the card that you play is definitely one of the pluses. I think just the look of the game is one of the pluses. The art is really cool.
Fantastic.
Now, modern art is basically a modern classic from Knizia, and I've played it a number of times in the past. I have an older version that isn't nearly as attractive as I would say this one is, that I really enjoyed. And I'm really glad that CMON re-released it. It's kind of funny because at Essen just a few months ago, right, there were different editions of modern art available depending on what country you're in. So it's really nice to see this great game revived and that more people get to try it because it's definitely a game that I think stands the test of time. And it feels just as good to play today for that diversity of auction, for the planning, for the strategy, but also it's still very light and quick to teach and play. What about you, Dan? What about a game that you tried?
So we all got to play a game called 13 Clues,
Yes.
which is now being brought by CMON to North America. And this is I'd say a family level light deduction game it takes about 30 minutes to play. It plays 2 to 6 players. It actually does work with 2 that a lot of deduction games don't. This game's really cool because everyone has their own crime they're trying to solve. You have a player shield in front of you, and everyone else can see what you're trying to solve. It's kind of like Clue. You got a person, a place, and a weapon that you're trying to find out. You can't see your cards, but you can see everybody else's cards. And so what happens is as you go around the table, you're asking people questions about, well, how many males can you see? How many females? How many ranged weapons? How many close-up weapons? And so you're getting this information, but everybody else is listening and learning from that. So there's no downtime. You're learning things on everybody's turns, and you're trying to narrow down because it's called 13 Clues because the game scales depending on the amount of players, and regardless of how many players, there's 13 different clues that you're trying to narrow down to figure out what are the 3 that are on your board. So you're trying to go around, find out what your 3 are, guess it, and win. It's super easy, it's super light, it's quick, but yet it has that fascinating thing where everyone has a different thing that they're trying to figure out. I love it because it's a quick light deduction game, and I love deduction games. I know Mandy doesn't like deduction games that much, so I tried to get her to play, and as soon as a 7th player showed up, she had no problem bowing out and weaseling her way out of there, so we couldn't make fun of how bad she was about to do.
I was trying to be polite. I mean, it was a young child. I'm not gonna dash their dreams.
Nice excuse. Always so polite. These Canadians.
But Mandy didn't bow out. We teamed
up. And you know what? And deduction games, and I shouldn't say that I dislike them. I just feel like some of them can make someone feel not intelligent. I really have had that in some, deduction games where you feel like, it gives you a bad feeling. Like, maybe I'm not so smart playing this type of game. This type of game I liked because it created a social environment while you were playing it. Like, it made it fun. And the fact that you had a younger child that could join, you had a nice diversity of group, I liked that. And that to me shows, okay, this could be a really fun game that can transcend through different groups. Is it a game that I think I need to have on my shelf and own? No. But if it came to the table, I think it would be fun. It's light and it's quick.
Well, I really enjoyed 13 Clues, and thank you so much, Dan, for teaching it. It just hit that really nice, light, quick deduction and it seemed like it's going to scale really well, so I really liked it. And then we learned a new rule to an old favorite.
So this was like a side note. So I played Dragon
old
Castle.
favorite to a game that most people still have not been able to play.
So we did a playthrough on this, and it's like, I don't know if we just didn't implement this or what, or maybe I just forgot when we were playing it here. I have no idea. Either way, I feel it may have cost me the win, but the stacking of the tiles... What is happening here? The stacking of the tiles. Let me get through this. The stacking of the tiles. I was under the impression, okay, it has to be 3 high, because the shrines have to go on 3 high. No. There is a little note that I was directed to by Dan.
We're talking about Dragon Castle, by the way.
Did we not say that?
No.
Oh. By the way, let's talk about Dragon Castle. All right. I got excited. I'm sorry. The con setting is like making me go crazy. And I love how you all sat there, let me talk about it, and went, she didn't say they were talking about Dragon Castle.
I had no problems with it.
This was fun.
This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anyway, as we discussed Dragon Castle, I was pointed out by Dan that, yes, you can, in fact, go beyond the 3 tiles.
No, I mean, you remember when you play games and someone tells you that you're playing it wrong?
Yeah.
and you go, oh my gosh, I've been playing and teaching this game wrong forever. Kind of like how Tom with no thanks and stuff like
Yep.
that, you know? So when I stacked that little domino Mahjong tile to the 4th level, because I had some other things I wanted to do, I didn't want to put the shrine on there. And you're like, you can't go higher than that.
Wait,
and I was like, wait.
Not just you. It was a consensus
It was the whole table.
amongst
And I
the
said,
table.
wait a minute. I had played this as a prototype with the designer, and he stacked to 4. That's the only reason why I know this, because I was like, whoa.
I'm sorry, who was the designer again?
Yalmar. And yeah, and so so I stacked it to 4, and they're like, well, you better check the rules. So I'm like, checking the rules. It gets back to my turn. I'm still checking the rules. It doesn't actually, from what I remember, it didn't actually say it in the rules, but in the example, it says,
Yep.
if you stack 3 or higher,
Yes.
you still get the 3 points, but you are allowed to do it. And so it was just a really funny thing where everyone's like, I never knew that. And I was like, yes, I didn't teach people wrong.
So I have a feeling this is one of those things, maybe on like the player aids and stuff, it needs to have like a ... or maybe not be on a side note, but actually in the rules.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and read the rule book. I don't
Sure.
want to criticize the rule book without confirming.
Right.
But
Me
if-
neither.
No, no.
Because I was looking very quickly.
It's in a little square box off to the side. I'm not saying it's not visible. It is. But that's...
yeah, but
and maybe-
I feel like rules like that need to be a main part of the rules
Oh, no.
section, not as a side.
I
And
agree
still,
100%.
still might be. I was looking through it
Yes.
pretty quickly in the runs of the battle.
Right.
But for those that don't know, Dragon Castle was one of my favorite games of the year last year. It was in my top 10 of last year. CMON is now bringing it. It was original from Horrible Games in Europe, and now CMON is bringing it to North America. Dragon Castle, the whole Mahjong style
Exactly.
board game that I love.
Which we all love. So it's definitely one that across the board I think we can
yeah,
all say
we've
we
talked about it
enjoy.
on the podcast before, for sure. so.
Exactly.
Well, another game that we got to play here that wasn't a CMON game, I actually, thanks to Dan, got to play Penny Papers,
Yay!
which Penny Papers is a roll and write.
Yes, and I was so excited because this is great. So Penny Paper Adventures. It's from Sit Down Games in Europe, and I was so excited because Suzanne, I call her the queen of the roll and writes, because she just not only knows about every single roll and write ever made, she also has pretty much all of them, and then she always teaches me ones. Like at Gamma, she taught me Welcome To and a bunch of these other ones, and she's turned me on to so many of these. And for the first time ever, I was able to show her a game that she did not know. So it was like the best thing. I was like,
That's
yes,
impressive.
I can retire now. I've shown Suzanne a roll and write she did not know. This is fantastic.
Speaking of roll and rights,
Oh, yeah.
actually no, it's Tom. So I don't know what that was. A terrible, terrible
What a
segue.
weird segue.
You know what that was? That was a Tom transition. That's what I do. I'll be like,
Yes.
speaking of, it doesn't fit anywhere in there at all.
I'm learning.
We were just talking about games that we've seen or games that we've played here at CMON. We talked about the show a little bit. How are you holding up?
I'm really wide awake. I don't know why.
You've
Yeah,
seemed
'cause
like
it's
you've been
not like
playing a
6
ton
a.m.
of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Lorenzo. I played
I want to play that.
Gizmo. I played.
Ooh,
Oh, you play Gizmo. and
we really
Lorenzo.
want to. So
Yeah.
we were
I
just
played
talking about
Gizmo
we want to
twice.
play
We wanna play it.
Gizmo.
We're
I
Yeah.
really like it. I played Castle of 4.
Okay, that was good.
And I just saw some people, Azul, who did not only had not played Azul before,
Right.
but had not played almost anything before.
Oh,
the guy was
wow.
like, "Is this kind of like War of the Ring?" I was like, "Not quite." No, but I mean, I'm not. If you're listening, I'm not making fun at all. But no, they were like just amazed that these games exist. So I was like, "Yeah, these are great games."
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay awake. That's what it is because I need to drive tonight
That's right.
to get home.
That's why you're headed out.
Right. The airplane flight's one thing, but once I get there, it's like an hour, and I'll be there.
Right. Wait, and oh my
And the
goodness.
reason why you said I feel like I'm awake, I thought it was because you're always awake at like 6 a.m. or whatever, and you're super awake all day long.
I
and
slept
then-
until 6:30
And then
today.
usually right after dinner,
Slacker.
you Peter, you're like, okay, I'm going to bed, guys.
I feel no shame in that.
You should. No, I'm kidding.
No, you know what? Sometimes I get to the convention, people are like, you should have seen what happened last night, and this person was crazy, and I'm like, oh, I'm cool. I missed all that. Although, yeah, I'm good. Well, anyhow, roll and write games, they're fantastic.
Dude, have you played this one?
So we were just talking about the new Penny Paper Adventures
Yeah.
from Sit Down Games. Have you had a chance to play them?
No, I haven't seen them yet.
Okay.
So Dan brought his copies over, and we got to play them last night, and
First rolling
had a ton of fun.
that she didn't know. It was great.
Dan is always very happy when he gets to do something first.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, like someone else I know. His name's
I don't care.
I'm Tom Vassell.
You know what, though? I think roll and write's going to be running to the ground this year. I'm calling it now.
Really?
I like roll and write games, but I think we're going to see a lot that are fun, but when you're done, you'll be like, oh, what was that about again? And I think we're going to see some. Not every roll and write is amazing.
I agree.
No,
I
that
agree.
is true. But that one we played at the Gathering, is it Gans Schon Clever?
We
Yeah.
actually played it last night.
Again,
We
Sean
played it
Clever.
again. That was really good. I really like that
I
one.
like that one, and that one's good, but
Yeah.
like the one that's really stuck with me is Steamrollers.
Yeah.
Right,
Oh,
that's,
it's amazing.
I love that.
That's one that
I
I
love that.
feel is different than the other ones more so. Like there's a lot of these ones with numbers and things, and if you point it out to me, I'll be like, yeah, I think that one did this and this. Steamrollers felt different than the rest.
And I like the fact that I had played the original, and I think you had as well. And
Yep.
they implemented some changes, like with the objective cards,
Yep.
which I really enjoyed. And
So, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying roll and writes are the escape room games of 2018.
Now, I'll say they're more than that because I think they're easier to design.
Right.
Escape room games are harder because you can't make any mistakes
But meaning
on
that
those.
there's so many of them coming out. And
It's definitely the hottest thing right now, I would say, besides IP games.
Yeah,
Everyone's making a game about whatever. Hey, there's a new TV show, there's a board game.
that's true.
Well,
I'm not
I
cynical.
bet you she'll agree. Suzanne will agree with me, but I don't think they could put out too many roll and writes because even the ones that are just okay and fun, I just still find so lovingly engaging.
They're
I
easy
just
to
love
pick
those
up.
Quick,
They're
games
easy.
You get portable.
Yeah.
You can travel with them. Just love them.
It's an ease.
There can always be too much of anything.
Really?
Pie?
Think about key lime pie.
I have eaten too much key lime pie. I have done it, all right?
Wow.
There could be too much. I don't know. I'm glad roll and write is not a bad thing to have on the scene.
Right.
It's good. They're fun games, and I think that they work well.
Yeah.
I do think it's weird when people are like, look at this new thing. No, Yahtzee was out a long time ago. But
And speaking of eating too much pie, if you haven't yet signed up for the Dice Tower Cruise, you should do so because I am a purchasing member of the Dice Tower Cruise Club, and I loved it so much. We are going back next year,
Okay.
and you guys should check it out because it is a blast.
more importantly, Dice Tower Con is like soon. Sign up for that. I promise Suzanne
You
pie
said
there.
Pie.
Yes.
See, I was teaching you how to
We're
do a
not-
real segue.
No, we're not doing pie on the cruise, though, so it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, but
always
I'm with
pie
Tom
on the
that one.
cruise.
That's the kind of segue I
There's
like.
no pies on the cruise. I followed you. I know what pies look like on the cruise.
I didn't eat no pie. All right, I got to run, guys, because I'm going to go eat some pie. All right.
Yeah.
I will go on record as Tom walks away so he can't do anything about it. Say, I disagree. And I'm with you, Dan.
So you're talking about penny papers
Yeah.
and adventures. That's a roll and write
More
that I
roll
have to
and write.
teach you.
Yeah.
And
And this is really a series.
so it's a series. There's 3 games coming out now. I have a feeling they'll do more, but I'm not aware of it. Yes, there's a series of 3 games. Basically, they go from as light as Quicks to maybe about Rolling America to a little heavier, maybe like Dice Stars-ish or something like that.
Which, if you haven't played any of those,
Right.
they definitely range in complexity and difficulty. And you have 3 dice and you have a little scoring sheet, and you'll have a choice of writing numbers, and then depending on how numbers are grouped, you'll get points. Or each series, each individual game has different special abilities and special faces on one of these 3 dice. And it really changes up how the game. So one of the games has you scoring points based on cross sections when you can write numbers across from each other. Other ones have you score extra points if you can put like a tent near a certain grouping, like equal numbers, or a tree by disparate numbers and things like that. They both play very quickly, and what I really liked, one of the things I really liked about it is that these are the kinds of roll and write games you can do where you, as many score sheets as you have, you can play, because there's no denial or drafting or anything like that. It's 100 people.
You could put this on a convention projector screen and play with as unlimited amount of people as long as you have enough sheets.
Yeah, and I thought they were quick, and they definitely range in difficulty. Some of them hurt your brain a little bit more, and I really like. And each of the games has a double-sided score sheet, so there's 2 different maps for each individual game, which really extends it as well. That was nice.
Yeah, another cool thing is all the rule sets are somewhat similar, meaning the flow of the game and how things work. And some of the dice even are somewhat similar, like the bad dice between each game, but they all have like a subtle twist too, so they're easy to teach. But and they're somewhat similar, but yet very different. So they sort of have like a theme within the 3 of them.
Okay. This is one I'll have to try. Like, I know you brought it, so
I've
you can
got
show
it.
it to me? Okay,
Yep.
so I'm definitely all about the roll and write. And while we're on the topic of roll and write, we have received so many emails about Roll Through the Ages. There is a reason why we didn't talk about it.
Well, there's a reason why you didn't.
And it didn't come out because I wouldn't have thought to mention it. I have never played it. So that is why it wasn't mentioned. No, that's not saying it wasn't a good game. I've just never played it. I don't own it, and I don't know anyone actually in my area who owns it. So with that being said, we are going to rectify that by having a part 2 at some point of Roll and Rights. Okay? So by that time, hopefully I will have played it. I just had to toss that in there.
And if people want to go back through the archives, one of our earliest shelf staple segments, I actually covered
You
both
did.
of these.
So because you've played it. So
exactly.
we had to throw that in there. So there you
Clarifying
go.
history. All right. So, Mandy, you got to try a new game.
Yeah.
New to you.
New to you.
New to me. So maybe, well, I'll let you do the description because you know this game really well. Council of Four.
Sure.
So Council of Four, just so you know, Dan and Suzanne have played it, a previous version. I've played the latest version from CMON.
So Council of Four is originally released by Cranio Creations
Yes.
over in Europe, and that's the version I had previously played. And I'm really glad I got to play the new CMON edition here. And it's a pretty straightforward game where you are trying to match, you have these councils you're trying to please, and they're in different colors. And then you have cards that match the different colors. So if there's a yellow, brown, brown, blue council set, you turn in a yellow, brown, brown, blue card, and you appease the council, and then you get a benefit from that. You get these tokens, and the tokens let you eventually put people out on the board at these different locations.
Right.
And the locations will have different bonuses, the tokens have different bonuses, and ultimately it's not really area control, but what happens is that you're going to be putting your little representatives out on the board at these different locations. And one of the most fun elements of the game is that when you put them in an adjacent location, the bonuses chain. So deeper into the game, you're trying to create these really cool combos. On the other hand, the locations are coded in different ways. There's a red or an orange or a yellow or blue sections. There's also scoring to be the first one to get representatives in both those locations, but they're not connected. So there's this interesting choice sometimes you get to make about going for that kind of area control versus going through the connections and creating the combos. And then when the council members just don't line up for you, there's an action that lets you replace a council member. And it has this little sliding thing where you nudge the council off the end and put your new preferred council member on the council. A lot of nice little action selection going on, a very tight economy. Money is very valuable in it. I loved it in the Cranio Creations edition, just from a pure mechanical gameplay point of view.
Agreed.
But then, of course, CMON gets their hands on it, and holy wow, I love wooden meeples. But now the CMON edition has unique sculpts for each one of the different council members and colors. The pieces they're big too. I was really impressed by the size of them. You've got all your little representatives. Each player has their own little mini representing their council. The colors are bright and modern and vivid. It's a really interesting color palette that you don't often see. And so that was, the new Council 4. Now, Mandy, as a first-time player, what did you think?
So at first I was a little leery. I'm like, okay, we're going to see how this goes. I like the fact that I see lots of ways to score. That's a bonus for me because we all know I love Feld and, point salad type games. I like that. I liked the chaining effect, which I wasn't particularly good at, but I was just learning it. And then I realized, oh, wait, it actually pays to have these chained because Dan had a really killer move with the queen. It's the queen that you were able to place, and it chained a whole bunch of areas for you because you had representatives in all of those areas. So you were able to accumulate lots of points really quickly. And then by, I think you had all of the colors, like you had representatives in like a specific color on the board, which allowed you to get, was it like 25 points or something like this?
Yeah, it was a
right
big
off
bonus.
the bat?
25 because it was the first person to get the bonus,
Right.
and then 8 for the colors. So
And
it was like
that's
33.
skyrocketed you.
Yeah.
So I think you could see the fact that if you set yourself up properly, you can chain a whole bunch of things, and then the board is like your oyster. You have so many things that you can do, and I like the secondary action. That was great.
And there's a whole thing a political track that you can move down and get more and more bonuses throughout the game if you get really far, lots of points. So there's a lot of different, even long-term strategies you can take, as well as the tactics.
But do you feel that you could, I feel like you should kind of stick to a couple things versus kind of being
for
everywhere.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not blocked into doing one specific thing.
Right.
I love the CMON version as well. The board, the Cranio Creations was great, but it did look like a dry Euro. both in the box and the board and stuff.
Right.
In this version, the colors pop. It really stands out really well. So yeah, I'm really impressed with it. The only thing that's different, I'd say, is this board is not modular, where the older board was.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know yet. Obviously, we've just played this version once, so I don't know yet how big of a deal that's going to be. Having the different areas be possibly in different spots. I heard it, from what I've heard from the CMON people, that they didn't think that made a big enough difference in the setup, and they were able to more balance the scoring in that way.
Okay. I enjoyed it, and that was my first time playing it. I have nothing to compare it to. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to playing it again so I can better understand the game. I was just randomly trying different things to see how they worked mechanically, but I definitely would like to try it again, implementing an actual strategy. But I liked it. I didn't find it overly mean. Sometimes some of these games, because someone places their representative on a board, and then you want to go there as well. Yeah, you can go there, but you're going to have to pay for it. I mean, that's totally fine. You're not kicking someone out, bye, see you later, and it's done. So I didn't find it overly aggressive, which I also enjoyed.
Yep. So we're also going to talk about some games that we didn't necessarily play right here at the CMON Expo.
Sure.
One for me is from Bezier Games called 1 Week, not one night, but 1 week Ultimate Werewolf. For anyone that doesn't know, Bezier does a lot of werewolf-themed games. They're typically hidden identity games. If you like those style of games, keep listening. If you typically don't like those style of games, keep listening. Because what happens is, in a lot of those games, it's just about he said, she said, I'm lying, you're lying. This is literally a full-fledged board game where you're moving around different rooms, getting different abilities, and it plays well with even the lower player counts, which most of those games don't. Essentially, he has blended the Ultimate Werewolf theme and the Mad King Ludwig themes together, because you're going around the mansion to different rooms, and different rooms have different abilities, sometimes during the day, sometimes at night. And so you're actually moving around, you're playing cards on your turn to move around to do special abilities, and then at night, each player gets to take an action while everyone else has their eyes closed. So, and you can only do stuff with people that are in the same room with you.
Right.
So like, unlike just saying he said, she said, there's actually like, okay, I want to do this. Now, gamer-wise, how do I actually manipulate my hand management and my cards in order to get to where I need to get to at the right time to do the thing I really want to do?
Right.
So it really makes more of a board game of it. Now it is hidden identity, and you are trying to lie. So some people that don't like those games, this might still not be for you.
Sure.
But for people that are like, oh, there's way too many of these games out, I don't want to see another werewolf game, it does feel very different. And I think it's actually on Kickstarter right now. So it's 1 week Ultimate Werewolf. Very different from anything he's done before. Similar feel, but it does feel very different because it's actually literally a full-fledged board game.
And that's what I was about to ask you. Like someone who's, if you have somebody who's like, I have all the werewolf games, that's my thing. Do I need to buy this?
It feels very different. So
Okay.
I would say it's not just a reskin of another Ultimate Werewolf thing. It's just a very different game because, again, it's a whole board game now.
But it's not going to change your mind if this is not the type of game that you're
If
into.
you just don't like lying and hidden identities at all, you probably still won't like it. But if
Okay.
you didn't like just the card playing, the card versions of the Ultimate Werewolf stuff,
Right.
this one you still might want to try.
Okay. And those games never work with my groups. It's just, I don't know if it's just like a chemistry thing, but maybe just people don't put their 100% effort into it. But I'm glad to see that they're trying to branch out a little bit so people who are big fans can have something different that they can add to their collection, but still in the same kind of vein as well.
Cool.
Yeah. All right, so I was lucky enough to play at the gathering. I didn't get a chance to talk about it when I was with Tom. The game called Micropolis. So Micropolis is designed by Bruno Catala and Charles Chevalier, and this is published by Matago. So I've heard a lot of comparisons to King Domino, but I'm going to explain why. So the game is you have ants and their colonies, and in the game you're kind of trying to draft these tiles, and you're trying to complete your colony and collect sets of fruit, and you also want to make nice long paths and have a queen in your path in order to get additional points for scoring. So it's kind of reminded me a little bit of Century when you have I think it's about 6 or 7 tiles, I can't remember offhand, but you have tiles available that you can take in order to kind of complete your anthill colony area. If you want to go further in the line to acquire a tile, you need to pay for it. So this is where you use your little worker ants that you have, or if you don't have very many, then you're getting that first free tile. And for every tile you want down that line, you have to pay an ant and then take that tile and place it in your area. So the rounds are very quick, because once everyone's picked a tile, placed it, then you're on to the next round. You want to try and make these long connections and have tiles with, like, for example, a queen in an area, because this queen is going to score for every tile within that, I don't know if it's the correct term, but I think colony. If you have two queens in the same colony, they cancel each other out. So then you're not scoring those extra points. But you can have two separate colonies and two separate queens, and then those would count for their own respective points. You also have tiles that give you other ant workers, which you're also going to need to place on other tiles, which provide you victory points. Again, the ants are also used as kind of a currency to acquire other tiles throughout the game. I feel like I'm missing another one. The fruit! The fruit! Oh my goodness, this is the biggest thing ever. Set collection is great here. So within the colonies, you want to try and get the different types of fruit. The more types of different fruit you have, the more points you get. And again, these are end of game scoring things, but these are things you want to acquire throughout the game. So the game ends after a certain amount of rounds, and then you want to count tiles with the queens in the colonies. You want to count worker ants or on the actual tiles that in your actual area, your army, I guess you could say. You want to count victory points. There's a whole bunch of things you can score for, and then that's the end of the game. So some of the elements are very similar to King Domino. You'll see some familiar elements with trying to acquire the tiles by dropping the ants, that sort of thing. I really enjoyed it. I was surprised, I'll be honest. I looked at it and went, okay, because I found the art didn't do it for me. It was nice art, it was colorful, but it felt very cartoony, and I don't know how I felt that connected to the game, so it kind of threw me a little bit. It's not bad, the connection wasn't there for me, but I really enjoyed the game, and actually it was taught to me by Eric Lang. Funny that we're at CMON Expo, and the game was taught to me by Eric Lang. And it was just one that went over really well, and it plays a high player count. It plays up to like 6 people, I think, which is great, but it goes quickly. A lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I definitely look forward to showing my lunch gaming group as well.
It's definitely a delightful drafting, a lighter family level drafting game for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I haven't even seen, I can't even visualize the cover. That's how little I know about this one.
Really?
So yeah, it sounds great.
It has ants and fruit on it.
It's coming out in a couple of months.
Oh, is it not out? Okay,
it's
I thought it was out yet. I
yet.
didn't realize that.
In
Okay.
fact,
So
yeah,
it's
I think
coming.
you guys have played the only copy that's even in anybody's hands at this point.
Really?
Yeah, so
Oh, wow.
you were a couple months
Fancy.
early. So don't worry about it if you haven't heard about it. It's called Micropolis, Micropolis.
Yeah, there you go. So look for that.
That is a whole lot of games played, but it being just the first day of CMON Expo, we've got a whole nother at least full day, plus half of whatever we can do tonight. I am really looking forward to trying Gizmo.
Yes.
I think we all are.
Gizmo is, I've heard, is if Race for the Galaxy and Potion Explosion had a baby game.
Okay.
Holy cow, that is a way to get my attention.
Yeah.
Because it has a hopper similar to Potion Explosion, but instead of the multiple rows, it just has a single spout spewing out marbles. So I'm super excited to try that one.
Yeah, and I saw people like not only just taking the marbles from the little spout, I saw them like reaching in and blindly taking some, which I don't know if it looks cool.
All right. And then Way of the Panda.
Yes.
I don't know anything about this one.
I know nothing about this.
Yeah, so Way of the Panda is sort of has an area control element and sort of a worker placement action selection element. It looks very interesting. It's got, of course, it's miniatures, right? But I've heard that this is sort of a medium-heavy Euro game. Which, so I know that like a lot of times most people, because I like lighter games normally, but a lot of people are like, oh, why would you like medium-heavy stuff? Like I've been really getting into the more heavier stuff over the last couple of years. Like recently I talked about Lisboa and Manhattan Project 2 and, you know.
I'm sorry. Back it up a minute. Did you just say Lisboa?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I've reviewed Lisboa. So I've been playing a lot more, heavier games lately. So like, I don't just do lighter games. I just prefer them. But I don't mind heavier games.
I'm impressed.
Just the heavier, the longer it is, the better it has to be for me to want it.
No,
you know?
that's
so. But Way of the Panda is sort of that thing where it's supposed to be a heavier Euro. That there's a lot going on, a lot of different ways to select actions. A very unique mechanism for getting actions, where you place on the board to get an action, and you can only go in one direction to get later actions. So it has some interesting choices that the choices you make now change what you can take later that round. And then there's different things that you're trying to control in the area on the board and things like that. So it does mix a lot of the mechanisms that I do like. But so I'm really looking forward to that one.
I mean, just from the title, I had no idea what it was about. But hearing you describe it, it's piqued my interest. So definitely one I'm looking forward to trying before I leave here at some point.
And you're really interested in one that came out last year around this time.
This is actually, so I've played it. So I played The Godfather. This was actually one that I saw the theme and kind of went, oh, The Godfather. But I really enjoyed the mechanics of the game. I liked the way it was done. I mean, you have people, you can throw them in the river. I mean, that's totally a Godfather thing, right? And I love the little cases that you can put your money cards and stuff in and your supply. I love that. Suzanne, though.
Yeah, it's actually on my list
It's on
to
her
try. Because it's a worker placement. I love worker placement games. And my understanding is that different workers have different abilities.
Yes.
And that is something I really like exploring in worker placement games. I have to admit, the Godfather theme, I appreciate the movies for what they are. It's just not my favorite genre. So the theme isn't necessarily pulling me in, but the description of the mechanisms really is. So that's one I'm hoping to get to try before I leave as well.
Yeah, so there we go. That's definitely one I'm absolutely willing to play. But before we even continue on, did we talk about the swag bag? Did we discuss this?
No, not yet.
I do not think we talked about this swag bag. So for all of you who have not come to CMON Expo, what? I have been peeking in bags. Unbelievable the games that, attendees are getting from just coming to the event. So what were some examples?
Well, I think everybody who came got a copy of Way of the Panda and Godfather, and I'm jealous. I'm like, I want a copy of it. Oh my gosh!
Right.
So they got 2 complete full games, and then I just saw tons of promos.
Tons of promos.
Yeah.
Like miniature
Tons
promos
of
for Zombicide.
Zombicide,
miniatures.
I saw some people with Besieged.
Did they cancel a 4?
I saw some people
yeah.
cancel for. I'm not sure.
I don't know if everybody got that.
Those were like
but-
super limited, but yeah.
Yeah,
it's really a cool gift bag. I didn't even know that attendees would get that, and I thought that was really, really cool. So you're paying to come and do all the demos and seminars and have access, but then you walk away with this massive swag
Essentially,
bag.
you're coming here for free because they're giving you more than
For
what you paid
reals.
for your badge with the games that you're getting.
Exactly. So I have to say, really impressed. I mean, they're taking care of their attendees with some amazing stuff. So it was nice to see.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to the rest of the weekend. So far, the vibe here is
Great.
just really pleasant. It's relaxed, it's upbeat, it's fun. There's a food court right next door to the hotel, literally attached by a skybridge that has a pie restaurant. It's not a restaurant, but it's like a pie bakery stand.
Okay, hold on a second. Like, Suzanne, everyone knows how much you love pie, and I know how much you love pie. I'm around you a lot. Sandman Dan in full effect, but...
Yeah. Oh, wait. Back it up.
Okay.
You need to define Sandman
So
Dan.
2 years ago at Gamma, the 3 of us hung out a lot, and we just decided we should come up with a name with ourselves, kind of like a Voltron. Like the 3 of us are always together, So we started to just come up with okay, let's just use like a little bit of our names and put it together, and then it just came Zanman Dan for Suzanne, Zan, Dan, Zan, Mandy, and Dan. So we are Zanman Dan. And so anytime we're like going to the Dice Tower cruise or this or any convention, we're like, hey, are you going? Yes. Are you going? Yes. Zanman Dan in full effect. It's just been coming this
So
thing
cheesy.
because we hang out. So
Well, we find it amusing.
so we hang out a lot, and I know her really well, and I know she loves pie. But I get a text this morning that says, do you want to come down for breakfast? Sure. I was just getting out of the shower. I was hungry. I wanted to eat some breakfast before we get this long convention. And I come down, and she's in the pie line getting pies. And I'm going, I thought you said we were getting breakfast. Yes, I'm getting breakfast. So when I think of pie, I think of, we just talked earlier, key lime pie,
Right.
coconut cream pie, right? Pies. No. There's pie for breakfast. Like
Pies are forever food, Dan.
I knew she was crazy about pies, but I did not realize
You
to
fool.
quite the extent of breakfast pies. And from what I heard, she was like standing at the door before they even opened, like with the pitchforks, waiting for them
There's
to open
video
it.
footage. We staked the joint out a little bit there before we got to make sure it's on the up and up, and then we had to be there first in line. Hello, I want the freshest pies, as
my-
does Suzanne.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's just put it this way. CMON Expo so far has been an absolute delight. The people are great. The games are great. The environment is great. The swag bag is great. And if all of that doesn't tickle your fancy, which I don't know how it couldn't, then just come for the pie.
Come for the pie.
To kind of wrap up our show, Mandy, Dan, and I had been talking earlier just about different games and how the components impacted the gameplay. And we kind of started talking about production quality of games and along those lines. It was really interesting because, Mandy, you and Dan, you kind of had some opinions about the production quality of game and whether there was a threshold, right, a line that you could cross that would be too much or not. I don't know. And so we thought just to kind of wrap up the episode, we'd chat about it here on the podcast. And I want to hear what you guys have to say. I have my own opinion. I'm sure you all there listening will have your opinions that we could see on like the Board Game Geek Guild or something when the episode posts there.
So I'll start off because I had talked about this particular game, but we're talking about games that are potentially overworked, and it doesn't necessarily mean they're bad games, but you can see that a lot has gone into it. And I guess the question is, does it diminish the fact that it could be a bad game? Do people kind of say, oh, it's so pretty, and it distracts you from what potentially could be a game that's not particularly good? I played a game recently called Feudum, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. And I was excited to get this game.
It's a beautiful looking game.
The art is fantastic. It's beautiful. I paid a lot of money for it. Let's put it that way. And so I had high expectations. I had gone through the rules, which is big for me. I don't always this looks good and I'll go with it. And I'm like, it sounds interesting. When we started playing the game, and I played it quite a few times now, it has, that combat element in the game. The best thing about this game is the guild. So anybody who's familiar with this game, the main thing on this game are the guild actions. And this is what allows you to do a lot of things in the game. So for example, acquiring resources. I love the whole push and pull mechanic. Dan, have you played this one before?
I have not.
You have not played it. Okay, so in the game, having majority in the different guilds is what's really going to benefit you here. Okay? And you can be bumped off at any time by other players because they have more majority on the board. So in the game, you have these little dice, but they're your workers, and you can change them to different sides. So you can have an alchemist, you can have, I think it's the military side with the axe, you have the church, the crown, you have different things, and these enable you to do different abilities and also count towards your majority in that particular guild. And within that guild, you have 4 spaces, means, you're the head of the guild, and then there's the apprentice, which is right at the end, which really doesn't get you very many benefits at all. And when you're counting up points at the end of a season, you want to have that top spot because you get the most points. So I'm not going to go into too many details here because this is quite a long and complex game, but you get the general consensus that you can have combat, you can have resources, you can develop on the board, but people can take them from you. You can travel to different areas of the board by boat, by roads, but you may not have that resource available. So there's a lot of that blocking kind of happening. You have push and pull actions on the board that you can do, but all of these actions are generated by using the cards that you have. And so you're choosing these cards in advance and then playing them, so it's really important to plan. You can play a card and oh shoot, I can't do that because you don't have the resource or you don't have the worker or whatever the case may be. It's a game that you definitely need to plan your actions in advance. Okay, so this is a basic skeleton. I'm not giving you the entire game, but you get the gist of it. This is the type of game, and I'm going to say it, I'm sorry, I was disappointed. I had such high expectations. The art is beautiful, and I know a lot of people weren't crazy about the art. I actually really enjoyed it. I felt I could have done away with a lot of the things in the game if we just focused on those guild actions. I think that's the game. That was the gameplay for me. I just felt it looked like you just tried to throw everything in but the kitchen sink, and this is a game that I think needed to go back to the drawing board, and it needed to be retested, potentially with a group that hadn't played it. It felt like it was a game that was played with the same group over and over again, and you get blinders and you miss things. So I think this game needed to be replayed, stripped down to those, focusing around those guild actions and work from there. So for me, that's the type of game that I feel was overproduced, lots of hype, and this was something that Suzanne and Eric had talked about, and for me, it was a bit of a disappointment.
So when you say overproduced, though, I mean, where the dice were core to it sounds like you could flip them, because I haven't played it. But
so
it sounds like
so the dice, they had the different sides. So each one represented one of the guilds on the board. So you could have the church, you could have the farmer, and the reason why you'd want to potentially have one of these is because the cards would allow you to do certain actions, give you an additional action depending on how you played it, if you had that particular worker out on the board. It also would add to your majority in a guild. Having that worker would add to you having majority in a certain type of guild. I just feel like a lot of the pieces, like there were all these added-on expansions, which weren't really expansions. It was like a Kickstarter thing. You had a card here or a tree here or something like this. I just felt a lot of work seemed to have gone into it, making it look really pretty, and the actual components, like the animals or you can use for attacking. Really nice, like ceramic type miniatures. Like they were really pretty. Everything looked like there was a lot of effort put into this game. Like if you just looked at the shelf, wow, the foiling on the box, the board had all this really creative art on it, but it was really hard to actually read in the game. Some of the lettering and the words. It just looked like a lot had gone into this game. And to me, it just didn't deliver.
And you used the term overproduced.
It was.
And you view it as overproduced because the production quality didn't meet your expectations for the gameplay?
For the gameplay. So, yes. So when I say, like, the components themselves were quite nice. I was a little disappointed in the card quality, but overall, the game itself, component-wise, was fantastic. Over the top. It was great. The box, right down to the box. The gameplay itself, to me, that's the part I find
So you're saying that, so what you're saying is your feeling of the gameplay didn't match the component quality.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Because when I think of overproduced, I think of something different. I don't know.
Okay, no,
Yeah,
but
no,
this
I-
is,
When I think of overproduced, I think of something. Okay, let's take a step back to like early to mid 2000s.
And can I interrupt for a minute? No, I just want to make sure. Maybe I'm thinking hype overproduced, or maybe I'm combining the two. So
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean I get what you're saying. You look at this big, huge, beautiful game, and you're expecting something different.
Right.
So I understand where you're coming from. But like when I think back to like the early to mid 2000s, you look at Days of Wonder. Like they were the only company at the time known for doing amazing components and amazing production, right?
Yep.
Right.
And then everybody else finally caught on.
In a more substantive game.
Right, right. Yeah, right. They were doing these big games, and so that, and then over the time, now we come to now in the 2018, where like what they were doing back in the 2000s today is like
Pretty
it's
basic.
average,
Yeah.
right? Is average. So thinking of that sort of historical avenue, right? When I think of overproduced, I think of two things. Number one, I think of, is this game bigger and much more grandiose than it needs to be? And B, let's talk about cost and value, right? To me, that comes through with producing and overproducing. Because many times, a couple years ago, a game came out, Abyss, from Bruno Cathala designed it, and essentially it's a card game, right? But they had this big board and this huge box. It was a $60 game that could have been a $25 card game with the same art. That game was overproduced, I felt, because it did things that did not transpire or were not even necessary or needed in the game, but they just did it because they wanted to make this great production. But none of it really was very functional to the game. On the opposite side, there's plenty of games that are underproduced, where you play like a card game and you're like, man, there's a lot going on the board here. I really wish there was a board to put the cards in the right spot. Sometimes you can have underproduced. So when I think of overproduced or underproduced, I'm thinking of games of how is the game play? How do you function and play with the game, with the components that are there? And do the components actually add and help with the functionality of the game while also drawing you into the game? Versus, let's just make a bunch of stuff that you don't use because it looks cool. So like that's kind of like what I'm thinking of. Now, a recent example I was thinking about was a game called Grim Forest, which I think is a fine family game. Mm-hmm. But they had all the amazing production. And by the way, I just looked it up. It's because I always think of cost. When publishers do stuff, a lot of times they'll take a small card game and they'll put it in a bigger box. And because of that, they do other things because they want it to stand out on the shelf. Now, if you've got a game that stands out on the shelf because it's a pretty big box versus like it could fit in the Amigo or the Schmidt-Spiele style small little card game boxes for $12, a lot of times in America, people like big things. It's just what they do. So in Europe, a game will come out as a small card game, and sometimes when publishers bring them over, they'll redo that game into a much larger game because that's what this culture tends to want. Right?
When I Dream.
So When I Dream, for example.
Yeah,
so with Grim Forest, it's a $50 retail game, and the production is amazing. And actually, I think the value is excellent in this game because when you open it up and you look at the custom trays and all the pieces, and you go, wow, this is a $50 game. This is totally worth it. So I don't think this game was undervalued for what it was in there. My problem with the game was that a lot of the miniatures, more than half of the miniatures, almost never come out. And actually, even 2 of the last 3 times we played the game, none of the miniatures came out with the full complement of 4 players. And it was like, okay, I get that these look cool, and I get the kids are gonna like it, but like half this stuff didn't even need to be here. And that's what I thought of when I think of overproduced. It was stuff that was there that really didn't have any inkling on gameplay and almost never got used, or not as much as you would think. everyone's like, "Oh, these things are so cool. You think they'd come out more?" And that's what I was thinking when I think of overproduced.
I feel can't tell how much I'm agreeing or disagreeing with you, to be honest, because on something the cost thing is interesting, Dan, but for me, like with Grim Forest is a great example. Grim Forest is a lighter weight game, and it has all these gorgeous components. The 3D pieces that you build up your brick or your wood or your straw houses with, the miniatures that you were talking about that represent your player pieces or the monsters that come out. And do they need to be these beautiful sculpted minis? No. Do you play with everyone every game? No. But you have this amazing box full of fabulous components, and they draw people in. I mean, you did mention drawing people into the game. I've had Grim Forest out on the table at a convention, and especially kids and adults are drawn to it because it's so visually compelling and it has such great table presence. And I don't know how you can say that is overproduced simply because you don't use every piece every time. I think that just ups the toy factor, and I think that especially for the audience it's geared at. Now, you could argue, gee, you wish the game was a $30 game with less expensive pieces.
That's where exactly I was going, was that the pieces that you said were great, were awesome. All the houses, those all get used. Everything else, if you took the miniatures that almost never get used out of that, and that was exactly what I was thinking, could that be a $30 game instead of a $50 game? If that's the truth, then sure, I would. In that case, because it doesn't do anything in the game, the other pieces are still going to draw people in, but more people will probably be able to play the game because it's at a lower price point.
But do you think some people are okay with that?
Well, I think they must be. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have made it, and it wouldn't have been a successful Kickstarter if it didn't.
Right.
Well, and this kind of dovetails a little bit into what Mandy was saying about Feudum. And Mandy, it sounds like you kind of felt that Feudum's beautiful presentation and high production quality not misled you, but it kind of teased you into thinking that the gameplay would meet a higher echelon than it did for you. And we've had this discussion before, Mandy, you and I,
right,
about in today's world, there's very little room for bad art in games because the internet has opened up a wealth of artistic resources around the world, talented artists all around the globe, literally, that game designers and publishers have access to, to make games look good. So there's two sides of it. There's no excuse for a bad-looking game, but there's no can it be too much, this concept of overproduction. And I definitely understand the idea that you wish a game played more up to the level of its visual presentation.
Right.
But from this quote-unquote overproduced, even with Grim Forest, I know it could be a less expensive game, but then it's a different game. And I mean, we can look at Days of Wonder, using your example, Dan, from 15, 20 years ago. That's how they stood out, by being the highly produced, great art, great presentation, molded inserts, all of this beautiful stuff. It was a standout product. And so just as it literally raised the bar. So now the foundation for game production has lifted. So when we're talking about games being overproduced, are we just dealing with a mental transition between what was and what is going to be? Whereas now, a Grim Forest is setting the new bar. Days of Wonder is now a very high quality, excellent imprint of a publisher producing beautiful games that still we all look at and just marvel over the production. But now Grim Forest, Druid City Games or Feudum or all these other, whatever Kickstarter enables, that's just lifting the bar. That's the new Days of Wonder model where the production quality just has to lift as our hobby and our industry evolves, as they fight for eyes. There's thousands of games entering the market. How you differentiate yourself, component quality, art quality, that has to be one because mechanically it's a lot of noise.
And if that continues to happen, then one of two things are going to happen. Either people are going to continue to go in that direction to the point where they fall off the cliff, which means the games are going to be so expensive that nobody would be able to produce those in a lighter game like Grim Forest if they continue to go in that direction, because no one's going to pay $75 for a lighter family game that's like that versus, say, a Rising Sun, which you look at all that production, and if it's a bigger, more grandiose game, I think people are willing to pay a higher price for it. At some point, either they're going to have to produce it a little less to get it to the price point that it will actually sell and make money, or they're going to overproduce it to the point where they're going to get to a place where people are not going to spend how much money it takes to make that game. And at that point, then they'll have to back off. So right now, you're going down this this line, and at some point, it's going to have to maybe come back. So as people are pushing, at some point, there's going to be some type of cliff that might be there.
I mean, because we keep bringing up cost, that seems to be a really big part of it. People are going to get to the point, this is where we have to be careful. People will get to the point where they're like, you know what, that's my cap. I'm not spending that. And that's when companies, well, they're here to make money. That's what it's about. And this happens all the time. Pull back, make changes in different ways. When I was talking about Feudum specifically, for me, my issue wasn't even so much about the cost. I have no issues spending $150 on a game. Like Food Chain Magnate. That game was really expensive. I love it. I play it all the time, and it is the most simple looking game you've ever seen. The art is very simple. It is very plain looking. I love it. I love that. I also like that kind of retro vintage vibe. But for me, it's basic, but the gameplay is solid. I hate a game that just throws things in for the sake of throwing things into the game. Why be complex for things being complex? And then on top of that...
Are you talking about mechanisms, or are you talking about tchotchkes in the game?
Everything. But specifically, in this case, mechanisms. But then it's not just that. It's mechanisms. And then on top of that, it's the tchotchkes. And then on top of that, do you know what I mean? It's just like some things on top of things on top of things. That didn't need to happen. It's like it needed to be amazing, even though it would take away the quality from the game.
I will say that I have talked to a couple of publishers that have said, we're doing this game on Kickstarter because we could never do this game through normal distribution and make any money on it. Mm-hmm. And so now Grim Forest was a Kickstarter, right? Mm-hmm. So people that go straight to Kickstarter have more margin, so they can, quote unquote, possibly overproduce a game that they would not be able to do without Kickstarter, because the margins get eaten up by the middlemen and the distributors and stuff like that. So I think you're more apt to see games get, quote unquote, overproduced in Kickstarter because their margins are much higher than if you were to just go straight distribution.
I just think the concept of being quote unquote overproduced is odd, when part of the reason why we all love analog games is sitting around the table and having this shared experience and touching things, touching objects, seeing objects, feeling objects, whether it's a card or a board or a miniature or a meeple. And the idea of up-leveling the visual presentation, the tactile presentation, the table presentation overall, and calling that overproduced, I call it enriching the experience. And I think the market itself will help at some point, I'm not going to pay $90 for Grim Forest, but people are happy to pay $50 because they're getting this amazing package. And that's what we seem to want. And to call it overproduced, the only place you start to stray into overproduction for me is when the production interferes with the gameplay.
I was just about to say that, and that's when I have a problem. You can trick the heck out of something. That's totally fine. But when it starts affecting the actual gameplay, no, I'm not going to spend that kind of money on a game that's but it looks really amazing, or something to that effect.
And that is definitely the space where I agree with you.
Right.
So poor Grim Forest, but using Grim Forest as an example, those miniatures may not have needed to be these big, beautiful miniatures that they are, but they don't hurt the gameplay. They're fun to put out, and they're fun to have on the table. That's awesome.
Like that.
And I wouldn't say poor Grim Forest, because it did really well on Kickstarter. It's doing really well now. None of us have said anything bad about the game. We're just using it as a good example for the conversation.
Of a high-quality produced game.
Right.
But I've had other games, and Kickstarter is a great example because stretch goals often force, production choices that maybe weren't fully planned out, where score track markers were converted from cubes or discs into a shaped meeple. Right. The problem is the board spaces were not designed to hold a larger piece. They were designed to hold stacking discs, which from a score tracking point of view works beautifully. But then you had these weird shaped meeples that you were supposed to stack that didn't fit into the space on the board because they didn't change the board design to accommodate the new Kickstarted stretch goal piece. Sure, you got a much fancier score tracker piece, but at the cost of its functionality in the game.
I see that.
That is definitely a space where I'm like, that feels quote-unquote overproduced.
But to a certain degree, I think people want... I'm going to liken it to fashion. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to talk about fashion for a moment here. We look at designers. You've got your Versace and your Gucci and so forth, right? And the prices...
Those are names.
Sure, okay.
Goodwill is my design.
Okay. But, Hey, and then you've got your Goodwill, and maybe you have like your Target or those other types of stores. Maybe the prices
Target
are
for the
lower.
win.
Hey, I listen. I'm wearing a $20 vintage dress. I'm down with all of that. My point is, it gets to the point where I feel this could potentially cause some separation. It's much like fashion. There are the people that can afford the $500 purse and the $1,000 shoes and those sorts of things. And that's fine. That's a very small margin of people, but there is a group that wants that. And then you have, maybe closer to the rest of us, they're in the mid to lower range. Well, we like those clothes from Target or Value Village or a department store, whatever the point may be. And we're okay having that, but it's nice to have the option if you want to boost it. Hey, I've got the money this week to make this better. So the market is obviously there for this overproduction to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. Like I said, it comes back to money. That's all it comes back to.
Yeah.
Money and return clients.
Well,
I don't want to say throw everything I just said in the trash, but just to bring like a thing up is you brought up something cool, an interesting point, like first player marker. They do most of the time they do nothing but track first player marker, and there's games that when you open it up, you're like, oh, that is a cool first player marker, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Is it draws you in? What does it do? Nothing. We just pass it around. Yeah, but it looks cool and it's thematic. That gets people excited, and I'm all for that. It's just that probably obviously added cost to the game,
right?
But then when you have a quarter of the pieces that are in the game that are like kind of first player markers, that's where I start to draw the line and go, okay, I paid way too much for this game. Yes, it adds to it, but like, where's that line? And it's going to be different for everybody.
Absolutely.
I do think it does come down to cost in the end.
It does.
Because people have a budget, they spend a certain amount of money on games, which we all know is a lot of money these days, and they have to pick and choose, and $10 could be the difference between them getting that game or a different game. That's all I'm saying.
And this is why Kickstarter is appealing, because you have choices. Everybody likes choice. You pick a tier that works for you, right? And then they still have that. You're backing it, so I get this, this, and this, and this, even if I didn't do the deluxe level. You're still getting something out of it. It's like gift with purchase when you're buying cosmetics. Yes, that's right. Back to my old jobs.
Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. I don't know if we quite agree on everything, but I really appreciate your perspectives. I know everybody out there, you all probably have a perspective on the concept of overproduction and what influences it. Usually on our Board Game Geek Guild, on the Dice Towers Board Game Geek Guild, there's usually a thread for every episode that gets started. I'd really love to hear your opinions or input on kind of what you think around games being overproduced, and if you agree, what drives that, and how you feel about that overall. So make sure that you jump onto the board and drop your thoughts there, because I'm feeling a lot of different things here, and I think I could learn more.
It's got a little hot, so I'm curious to see what else comes to the table.
Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Again, apologies that there might be a lot of background noise. I know that can be difficult to listen to, but the energy and the feeling here at CMON Expo is just so great that we had to, and Mandy and I get to record in person.
Yes, which never happens. I know, for those of you who don't know, we are not even remotely close to each other. So, what is it, 3-hour time difference between us? So it's nice to be at the same time, face to face. It's a good feeling.
For sure. We hope that you enjoyed hearing about the show and about the games. Dan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for bringing Zanman Dan back together on audio.
Yes.
And I look forward to seeing you at another show later on this year, maybe Origins.
Origins, I will see you next month.
Yes, absolutely.
And hey, next episode 556, Eric and Mandy
Dreams do come true.
will be together. And Mandy will be exploring her growing fondness and, dare I say, passion for top 10 lists.
Oh, yes, I know. I think Eric's a little excited about this because we're going to be talking about games that teach science, which actually science was one of my favorite subjects in school, so I'm a little excited.
I'm really excited to hear that one and hear yet another top 10 out of you. Mandy, you're just going to be an old hat at these soon.
I'm setting a precedent, and I don't know if I like it.
So thank you, as always, everybody, for listening. If you ever have a question for Mandy or myself, don't forget you can always email us, Suzanne@dicetower.com.
And Mandy, with an I, at dicetower.com.
And until next episode, thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, The Jack Vasel Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvasel.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandy, and Eric, with assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, Rob Searing, and Jeff Rademacher. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. Okay, so now we're ready for everyone's favorite part of the show, Two Truths and a Lie.
And it's been a while for you, Mandy.
I know, I feel like it's been forever, but I wasn't here last time, so let's jump right in. So I really enjoyed George Clooney as Batman, I really enjoyed Michael Keaton as Batman, and I really enjoyed Christian Bale as Batman. If you guessed that I really enjoyed George Clooney as Batman as the lie, you would be correct. He was awful. Okay.
Shots fired.
Michael Keaton. That's where it's at. So, what about Eric? What did Eric
That's
have
right,
to say?
Eric joined us last
Yeah,
time.
let's hear his reveal.
Hey, Mandy and Suze, I'm back to talk about my Two Truths and a Lie from episode 553. So my three statements were: 1, I have held the crystal balls used in Labyrinth. 2, I performed briefly as Bert in a stage show. Or 3, I have touched the dark crystal. Now, if anybody's followed my history, you know at one point I worked for the Jim Henson Company. I was an intern in the exhibits department, and in my duties there, I cataloged the dark crystal. It's made of plexiglass, and it's rather large. So yes, that's true. And I also at one point opened a box containing the crystal balls used by David Bowie in Labyrinth. So that's true. I have sadly never performed as Bert in public. So that's the lie. Thanks for letting me play.
All right, and my reveal from last episode was I've been to France, I've been to Norway, and I've been to South Korea. And the lie is I've been to Norway. Now, my mother is from Norway, and I have lots of relatives in Norway, but I've never managed to make it over there quite yet.
You need to make that trip.
Dan, as our special guest, would you like to join us for a Two Truths and a Lie?
Yes, I'm very nervous, but I'm ready to go.
All right, drop it on us, and we'll do your reveal next episode.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
I was a straight A student in school. I was the captain of my high school football team. I danced as Chuck E. Cheese at the Chuck E. Cheese place for kids' birthday parties.
That is quite the diverse
can't-
list. I'm very interested to see what the lie is there. So I decided to go the TV show route this time. So I love the show Dexter, I love Game of Thrones, and I love the show Friends.
Okay. And I copied you, so I went the TV route. I have never seen an episode of Doctor Who. I have never seen an episode of Star Trek Voyager. And I have never seen an episode of Babylon 5.
Ooh, there's some good stuff, so gotta listen to see what happens.
New from USAopoly is Thanos Rising, Avengers Infinity War, a cooperative dice and card game. In the game, players will recruit heroes and assemble a team to face off against Thanos and his villainous forces in an effort to thwart him from accomplishing his master plan, collecting all 6 Infinity Stones to power the Infinity Gauntlet and wreak havoc on the very fabric of reality. Play with all your favorite characters to take down Thanos once and for all. Available now at your favorite local game store. It's for 2 to 4 players and for ages 8+. Also, Tom has yet to win.